Light pollution news, September 2025, 10-point scale. An interesting study looks at what happens when we frame ideas around light pollution differently. More evidence for metabolism-related disruption from light at night in our circadian rhythms, and what is actually the biggest offender robbing us of vital sleep and our night sky. I welcome back to the show a dark sky advocate who's helping to right the night outside of New York City, Mr. Steve Mariconda, and just in time for some environmental talk, Mr. Frank Turina rejoins us. A lot of good stuff here today. Be sure to settle in. You're going to like this one. Welcome to Light Pollution News, the show where we talk about everything around the topic affecting the second half of our day. I'm your host, Bill McGeaney, starting you in your journey today. Welcome to any first-time listeners. I know you guys are probably asking yourself, what the heck is this show about? Well, we'll be covering a lot of ground, so strap in, have fun. We'll get to it in a second. Thank you for tuning in. As a reminder, you can find everything we talk about today by visiting us over on lightpollutionnews.com, where we have all of today's show links. We have show summaries over there. We have today's narrative. You can find every which way to connect with us via the show notes on whatever app you're using to listen to us. Finally, we are a listener-supported show, and we thrive on the support from you, the listener. We receive no outside support. So if you like what you hear today, why not support the show? Every little bit helps. Supporter memberships start at $3 a month. Which brings me to this. My wife, Caitlin's done a bang-up job with her social media, but she's going to be taking a step back. She has taken a step back from it. Anyone who's been following us on social media has noticed a shift or less frequent social media postings. If you know of anyone who wishes to grow their portfolio before taking on big projects or be trying to land a big job somewhere, this may be a perfect opportunity. Unfortunately, we do not have funds to extend this to a paid position. You can learn all about the role by visiting over on our website, looking under the Opportunities tab. Starting things off today, I want to thank back a couple of guests that couldn't be happier to have on here. We have someone making their second appearance on the show with a relatively new face for you at home. Steve Mariconda, welcome back to Light Pollution News. Steve, we've had some health-related news on this show. You just completed your master's in public health. So I'm curious, has there been any discussion on this topic at all in any of your studies?
It didn't come up much in my classes, but I did do my final capstone literature review on the topic of light pollution and its effect on human circadian rhythms. And I also went a little bit into safety aspects as well with glare and such. So I utilized the artificial light at night database that John Barentine put together. Actually, a lot of good sources there. So that was a big help.
It's an excellent source. Yeah. When you were doing your work, where do you see misguided effects of artificial light at night most on the human body?
It's mostly indoor lighting, particularly among healthcare workers and such, people that are just basically under pretty bright white lights, especially through the night, which is, of course, when our circadian rhythms want us to be asleep and not being exposed to these sunlight adjacent lighting. That's where the most evidence is in terms of melatonin suppression that's associated with hormonal cancers such as breast cancer and such, prostate cancer. There definitely needs to be more research, though, and more causal linkages among these associations.
Well, we'll get into some of that today. I want to also welcome back Frank Turina. Welcome back to the show. We are going to dive in some environmental news, Frank. I know this is your forte, and this is quite honestly why I have you on. Now, I like you, Frank. You're a great guy and all, but I like having you on for some of this environmental stuff that we go over. So we'll have environmental and health a lot on this show. But welcome back, Frank. How you been?
Good. I'm doing really well, staying busy, and haven't been out photographing or doing any astrophotography much lately because it's been way too cloudy here. So looking for, kind of itching to get back out there and take some pictures.
We had a lot of clouds in the spring, and then April opened up, and there was one weekend where it was just everything aligned. It was clear. It was new moon. It was perfect. I was able to get out. And typically back in the pre-global warming days, April upstate was a bit cold. It was like 60, 70 degrees nowadays. Yeah. So no, it's pretty neat. It's pretty good. Hey, Steve, I want to get back to you real quick. I know last show you mentioned that you like doing a lot of outdoor stuff. Do any big hikes?
I hike around. I did some hiking in the Rockies. I was there. I was just recently in Switzerland, in Zermatt, which is near the Matterhorn. I didn't do the Matterhorn, of course, but
not this time. Next time, right?
3,000 feet elevation gain. Just I'm a moderate hiker. I haven't really done much through hiking, like backpacking and such, but getting more into it. Trying to do Mount Marcy next month up in New York State, tallest mountain in New York State. So
yeah, that's one. Be prepared for the weather on that one. I made a mistake one time of hiking up Mount Marcy, and it was Memorial Day weekend. You would think it's a little warmer. Well, a storm came through, and I didn't check the weather. And it rained a little bit. Then it rained a lot. And then by the time I got out to Marcy, it was snowing and sleeting. And I had like my pack cover fly off the mountain. The winds were crazy out there. Came back down, and I had to essentially ford raging rivers to get back. So pay attention to the weather out there, because Marcy can get kind of crazy. You never know where you're going to get up there. Good stuff. I was asking because I know you mentioned you went up to Maine to the Katahdin Woods area. I did a 100-mile wilderness some years ago, and that was one of the highlights was going through and looking up at night, and you have a really nice dark corridor through that area.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely the darkest skies I've ever seen up near Baxter State Park as well.
Yeah, it was a great spot. Great stuff. And then we sat in a parking lot, me and my buddy, before we were waiting for a friend to fly into town. And I think it was whatever the major town is, Bangor, I guess, out there. They had like a concert, and we sat in the supermarket parking lot listening to the music. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Let's get into it. This one, speaking of the indoor light, right? Indoor lights are definitely a problem. It's no less light pollution. How many of you have had this issue? You buy a new device. It can be a modem, a window air conditioner. Heck, it can even be an air freshener. And what does it come with? An almost endless array of indicator lights. My headlamp has an indicator light to tell me how bright it is. I know how bright it is. I only an indicator light tell me how bright it is. So you have lights on the device itself that just randomly light up. And these lights that sit inside the device that flicker on or off maybe. Well, you guessed it. It's a lot going on there. Well, someone has figured out that they can actually monetize solutions to this. Lucky for me, lucky for you, John Carlson has seen that. Took up the question on how to block these annoying, completely unneeded indicator lights that are freaking everywhere. The cottage industry of light blocking stickers out on Amazon. So rather than simply say going down to your hardware store and getting some electrical tape and cutting it to size to cover over something, you can actually purchase an array of pre-sized stickers that you can cover up your indicator lights. Added bonus, they come in different colors to match the actual device itself. So
I've used these little stickers. The only problem is you really need to put like 3 or 4 of them to really block out some of these lights.
They're not thick enough.
Yeah, in my experience, but I find the electrical tape works a little bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always used electrical tape, but that's good to know. Now you have to buy multiple sheets of that. So when you're going to your Amazon Prime order, you have to make sure you get about twice the order, right? It's crazy, right? It's crazy. You have everything lights up in your bed. When we go to Airbnbs, it's like you're in a casino at night.
I definitely had that experience.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I need to start traveling with these stickers now to solve the problem. Maybe get a lot of different colored ones there. There's a study in Nature that utilized Earth hour data in one of the brightest places that I've ever been to, which coincidentally have really great food, and that being the former democracy of Hong Kong. It looked at a myriad of data, including images, sky brightness measures, and survey data between 2011 to 2024. During Earth Hour, researchers found that sky dimmed by 50%, largely from LED billboards and metal halide floodlights. Decorative lights provided only a small percentage of the total sky brightening. Rather, it was really LED billboards and floodlights, Steve, I think you mentioned this on the last show, that the study found led the way. As an addendum to this news story, there's also a follow-up that uses machine learning to pinpoint the exact sources of light pollution. So I don't think the research is too crazy, right? It kind of confirms what many urbanites like myself, like you, Steve, have already kind of known. The main problem in large population areas appears to be endless proliferation of poorly directed lights or LED screens that just seem to be put up by private business or private residents, right? Or here in Philadelphia, religious organizations. These problems appear to be amplifying all over the place, even to the point that there was a study that we had, there was a article that we had a couple months back that was talking about a New Zealand town planning to install LED billboards directly outside of its dark sky designated area. So, Frank, is this an education thing? Like, is this something, there's something more? Do we have to reverse? How do we reverse this trend? Is there a way to reverse it?
I think there are some places in the world where you can improve things, but in a sense, they're just so far gone that trying to get to recreate any semblance of a normal environment is just outside the realm of real possibility. Times Square comes to mind, Las Vegas Strip. There are just places in this country, in this world, where do we really want to expend our energy and time to try to make those areas more natural, or do we just say, okay, you guys, you people who want all these billboards and all that, this is your place, right? The rest of the world, we're going to try to protect and save and create some semblance of a normal environment. But I feel like those types of places, I personally, I think, is that where I really want to put my effort? And usually the answer is no. I would much rather find a place that's maybe somewhat polluted and fix that place, or protect a place that has great night skies. And that personally, that's sort of where I would rather put my energy, and let places like Hong Kong and Vegas and Times Square be. That's just my opinion.
Frank, when you're flying up, we did this a couple of years back, flying up to Boston in the morning, right around dawn. You can actually watch the LED screens from Times Square while you're up there, passing in the air.
God.
You can watch them. They're that bright and that big that you can actually see what's going on in Times Square.
Yeah, I did take a light meter to Times Square one time, and it was it's magnitudes per square arc second is the unit, and perfect night sky is 21 to 22. There it was, and daylight I think is close to. I don't know these numbers exactly, but they're below 10, right? And in the middle of Times Square, it was giving me like 13. Which was almost daylight. Which is almost daylight, basically. It was though there was really not much difference there.
They're doing what they set out to do, right?
Exactly. It is daytime all the time there.
Oh man, I just realized I got my Eagles mug here. I didn't ask you, Steve. We got football season upon us. Who do you pull for? Like, who's your team?
Not a huge dedicated football fan, but I'll generally root for the New York teams.
So I mean. So
Jets,
is that
Giants,
Jets, Giants? Well, you can't be one. You can't be both, can you?
Throughout most of my life, Giants. Yeah,
Giants. All right. Well, you went for the team that hasn't let you down for at least your lifetime, maybe your parents' lifetime. That's the Jets. Who I don't know why they still play football, honestly, but
it's fun to root for the underdog. So.
Yeah. Well, I will always thank you for Saquon. It was a great pickup. Much appreciated. And Frank, are you out there as a Broncos guy?
I am a Broncos guy, but we were talking earlier about Pittsburgh. That's where I grew up.
Oh, okay.
So I'm a Pittsburgh guy. I'm a Steeler guy, but I live in Denver, so I have to root for the Broncos as well. So I have two teams, and the tricky part is when they play each other.
Yeah, right.
I don't know who to root for. So I went to a bar with some friends. This is many years ago when they were playing in the AFC Championship game, and I wore my Steelers cap and my Broncos jersey to the bar, and people were wondering, like, what's my problem?
Very confused guy. Well, yeah. That explains why you're here today. But
yeah, there you go.
Well, closing out this article, if you happen to be curious about the light levels from an actual building, because one of the questions for the Hong Kong study was how much the actual buildings, how much are they putting out themselves from the windows and whatnot? You can look no further than an attempt to quantify that from Zendo, where Salvador Barr estimate that the interior lighting imparts upwards of 225 lumens outside. That's roughly 15% of the indoor light's lumen potential. Included in the model are an estimation for window size and wall reflectivity. And the more shades you have drawn, obviously, the lower that number is going to go. To put in context, car headlights have upwards of 6,000 lumens. Street lights tend to emit somewhere around 5,500 lumens. And once you know it, LED billboards during the daytime emit 18,000 lumens, getting you close to that number, the magical 10 number that you're talking about, Frank. So this next piece comes to us from Journal of Sustainable Tourism. Researchers surveyed people at Acadia National Park, Grand Teton National Park, and an undisclosed college arboretum located somewhere in an urban area in the mid-Atlantic region of the U.S., which means it's somewhere between Virginia and New York. I don't know why it has to be undisclosed. It's a top secret location. The study included 412 participants and asked questions focusing on 3 factors that influence the people's views on lighting. Those being the value that they place on natural light, their feelings and preferences, and the value that they place on protecting the natural night and wildlife. Now, the authors of the study claim that the sample represents a diverse population of individuals. However, I have a hunch that people who go gambling and enjoy the nightlife head to Vegas, while those who are a little more predisposed to roughing it probably head to Acadia and the Grand Tetons. I can't speak to the validity of that assumption, but it's just a feeling I have. Regardless, they found the overall that their sample was willing to accept lighting that benefits nature and doesn't harm wildlife. And participants were in support for lighting that benefited both humans and the environment. So I'm curious what you guys think. Obviously, I think the sample size here matters a lot. More importantly, do you think what they found was that there's actually wiggle room in what people will find as acceptable nighttime lighting? And here's a good example of why I asked that is because, quote from the article, when participants in other studies were asked to consider lighting conditions or scenarios for acceptability or safety without proper context, responses suggest a need for more light and whiter colors. Yet, when asked to consider the impacts to wildlife or other environmental considerations, people support lighting practices that have fewer effects and, as the results even here would suggest, might be detrimental to human preferences, enjoyment, and feelings of safety. I'm not sure if detrimental is the proper word to use there, but what do you guys think?
So full disclosure, I was involved in the early parts of this study. These are my colleagues, the Night Skies and Natural Sounds division. This was back pre-COVID, and my role was just sort of talking through the process and the goals of the study and what we wanted to look at. But I was involved in sort of the early discussions. I'm glad to see that they continued with that after I retired and finally got a publication out of it. I should probably just remind viewers that I worked for the National Park Service for Night Skies program for about 15 years, but I retired in 2000. So
in 2020?
Sorry, 2020. Thank you. That would have been a long time ago, but no. So 2020, I retired. So I don't speak for the Park Service. I'm really not. I know where they were 5, 6, 7 years ago, but I really can't speak to what their policies or views or opinion or management practices or anything like that at this point. It's been a while since I've worked there. Just a quick reminder.
Okay, so Frank is going to abstain from this one. Steve, when you're talking, I think this makes a pretty good case for it's how you frame the narrative. I guess, what are your thoughts on framing the narrative here?
I think it's important to actually just put out there that the lighting actually does have ecological effects, and it has negative effects, say, on pollinators or all nocturnal species and even human health as well. So it is encouraging to see that, like, in response to those cues, right, in the survey, that people will prefer maybe slightly warmer lighting. If you just focus on safety, security, and there's no educational component about the negative effects of artificial light at night, then you're going to get those people wanting brighter lights. So, yeah, really is that awareness.
Yeah, and I think, too, that one of the things that the study was looking at was the idea of the purpose of the light. There were studies in the past in national parks where if visitors saw and heard a helicopter fly by the Grand Canyon, they had very different opinions on the effects of that noise and how it bothered them, depending on what the purpose of that flight was. So if it was a flight for life and they were carrying a person out of the backcountry, there was obviously much less concern from visitors about the noise. If it was a sightseeing tour, there was, again, there's a different perspective, right? So I think one of the things that was this was trying to get at was, how does the context of the lighting affect people's perception of it?
Yeah, and that's an excellent way to walk out of this one, because I think that's exactly it. And I think that's something that, I guess, Frank, and I don't want to push you too far on this. What context do we know how to frame that up well?
When again, I was sort of involved in the early part, and I want to read through the study again because it was very interesting, I think. But I don't know what their methodology ended up being. And I know the idea of having preferences and thoughts of national park visitors and having something to compare that to, right? It's one thing to compare among park visitors, but it's something different to compare with another group of subjects that are going to a natural setting near an urban area. And how does that difference in location and context affect what people see as problematic or acceptable?
Very good. All right, well, let's go to this next one here. In a world of ecology, we've spoken a lot about fireflies this summer, and I think maybe this might be the closing chapter of the 2025 saga of fireflies. Maybe, could be, probably not. I don't want to say for sure. But did you know that China is home to 200 species of fireflies? Fireflies are embedded in the Chinese culture, celebrated in stories and literature. And one such story references an individual who read by the light of fireflies he caught in a bag because his family couldn't afford an oil lamp. China has seen a dramatic reduction in fireflies. Of course, much of that involves urbanization and the topics we typically speak to on the show. However, the Chinese culture also has recently, say in the past 20, 30 years, begun wedding and other celebratory traditions by capturing thousands of fireflies and releasing them in a grandiose display. In China, you can buy fireflies online, and I guess then hope that they somehow survive the journey when they get to you in time for your celebration. Now, one thing that I was not aware of is that firefly larvae depended on one habitat for upwards of a year with a range of around 500 meters max. That's about a third of a mile. So when habitat loss occurs, it can be very difficult for them to kind of move on. The group Keep the Fireflies Glowing notes that despite working to add 11 of their 200 firefly species to a government-protected list, Chinese law offers very little protection, apparently even less recourse to actually enforce such lists. The good news, as China grows richer, more people are learning and visiting ecological areas just to see fireflies. So there's also a domestication of firefly production for said events that we spoke about earlier that may offer some greater protections in the long run. Frank, every time you're on, I think I've had a firefly story, and I didn't want to disappoint you this time. So I came across this one, which I thought was really neat. This is an interesting approach to, I guess, solving a commercial problem. But they think even when you solve the commercial problem, you're actually prolonging firefly habitat some.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. And the thing that strikes me about this is just how much people love fireflies. If you Google like synchronous firefly lighting in Great Smokies National Park, there are so many videos and stories about taking the lawn chairs and going to the park and just sitting there watching the fireflies. And coming from the West, where we don't have any fireflies here, when I go back east to see my family and back to Pittsburgh and that area, it is the coolest thing to see fireflies again. It really is a very unique experience when you see an insect lighting up. I mean, it's very cool. There are very few instances where any kind of organism communicates with light. So I think it's just an excellent example of why it's so important to provide experiences like this.
Frank, we can purchase them for you and have them shipped to your house.
There you go. I would love to have a room just like full of fireflies. That would be great.
I'm not sure how long they would live or if they'd be alive when they arrive, but
true.
You have a whole bunch of fireflies, and yeah.
I was just because I mean the fact that this is a thing that people want to buy fireflies and have them is I think that I think it's a great example of how much people love things like that. And the fact that there is a market for it is great.
Yeah, I was going to say this season was actually, at least in the New York City area, we've seen more fireflies than we have in a long time. I think it had something to do with the moisture in the spring, but yeah, it was pretty spectacular to see. So, I mean, my mom was saying in Brooklyn she saw fireflies everywhere. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was a very wet spring here. I think it rained. I mean, it didn't rain at all for like a year before that, and then it rained endlessly, nonstop, all spring. But yeah, we've seen them. There's still a few marching around here. So yeah.
If you haven't seen the synchronous stuff, the where they're all flashing at the same time, where I think, again, this isn't my expertise, but a female will flash, and then all of the males, the surrounding, will flash at the same time. And I guess she's sitting there judging them by their flash and deciding who to get together with. But
it's like a 10-point scale.
Yeah, it is it's a really cool experience to see the when they synchronize their flashes like that, to see that.
Well, in the Journal of Evolutionary Biology, artificial light at night has been seen to reduce predatory threats to the Tungara frogs, but in turn, reduce the number of female frogs that may wish to entertain male frog calls, so thereby increasing sexual competition for reduced number of females. In this case, the predator was the fringe-lipped bat, and these animals, which are native to Latin America, researchers believe that light at night was the reason for a reduction in both predators and females in urban settings for these frogs. Per the environmental science and pollution research, they looked to see what the impact of artificial light would be on red buntings at a level of 2 lux, or the brightness of a small digital clock display. These birds saw the light, so to say, but the artificial light at night weakened the bird's immune system and decreased their stress level and created a potential for mistimed breeding. And then lastly, on the environmental front, we have a study out of Renewable and Sustainable Energy Reviews showcasing a different type of light pollution. This one being a daytime source of light pollution whereby solar panels in solar power plants confuse birds and insects by making them believe that the panels are actually waterways. Researchers use the term called lake effect to describe how animals mistake the panels due to the polarity of the reflected light off of them. A simple solution appears to be an anti-reflective nanocoating that may reduce the degree of light that is actually reflected out. I was thinking they could use the Advanta Black 310. I hear that's some really good stuff. But have you guys heard about that last piece of lake effect? Frank, in your environmental studies, do you come across that?
Yeah, one area that I remember reading about or seeing videos of is I think it's mayflies. When they breed, they're looking for water surfaces. And the way light shines off of asphalt mimics the optics of water. And so the mayflies will land on the bridge thinking that it's water and then just hang out there. And so you see pictures of bridges that are lit that are just covered with mayflies, because again, I think it's the polarity of the light that's reflected off of this asphalt mimics the same polarity of light that's reflected off of water. And so they can't tell the difference. And so you see these just massive
looks like it's
carpets.
Snowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's crazy. I didn't realize that maybe it's the polarity of the light. I always thought they're drawn to the actual light sources themselves, but you're saying it's the actual polarity of the light that's reflected off of the ground from the lights.
Yeah. So when the light strikes the asphalt, the way the light is reflected mimics the same effect on water. And so the mayflies are like, oh, it looks like water. That's where I want to be. And so they land there on the bridge. There's some great, really interesting images of bridges like that are just covered with mayflies.
Seems terrifying. Poor mayflies, man. They didn't know what they're getting.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I do know that effect exists from examples like that. And so I'm sure there are other examples of where insects are reacting to that kind of polarity.
Yeah, in this case, they're talking about water birds. So I guess like ducks and any of the creatures that kind of hang out in the water, they get confused by it.
Yeah.
I don't know the details on it. I tried to look up a little more details on it. It looks like the study itself was I couldn't get to it. It was very walled off. But I'm hoping that it's not the birds aren't actually flying into the panels themselves. I'm hoping that's not the case. But it is known to pull birds and insects off of their normal routes because they think there's water there, and then they land in somewhere in Arizona and there's no water in Arizona. So
yeah.
But all right, well, let's move on to something else. When I create this show, when I started this podcast, I thought there was really only one term for the culprit of our loss in night. And as I found out, that I probably used the most polarizing, no pun intended, term, the most undescriptive term possible, calling it light pollution. And according to the Discover Public Health, maybe I should rename this podcast to maybe something like Light at Night News Podcast. I don't know. It seems kind of dopey to me, but who knows? The reasoning for this is that the term light pollution denotes a perception bias towards the environmental related issues. And then also, because many people in our society think in very binary terms, I don't think I need to tell you who some of these people are. I'm sure you encounter them in your day-to-day lives. That being said, the term light pollution misses out on many of the circadian issues, Steve, that appear to be linked to our bright nighttime environments. It overshadows and doesn't resonate with the diminishing cultural heritage that we see in our bright nighttime environments. Although in our current political environment, I'm not sure how much anyone would actually care about those cultural heritages. It also completely clouds how to properly discuss matters of safety, bias, and accessibility. Both of you have talked to different types of people. Is there one unified framing that listener at home could kind of run with? Or do you really have to speak in terms of, say, if someone's concerned about safety, you have to speak focusing on safety? Or so I'm curious if there's one good framing or if you have to kind of customize everything.
In my advocacy experience, you usually have to customize, well, depending on the question. If someone's more concerned about the crime and safety, I'll focus more so on the glare impacting pupil dilation and such and making things less visible. But yeah, I usually find a way to make it one cohesive concept and using the term light pollution. I think it's interesting.
Oh, use light pollution? Oh, no.
but interestingly, what was it? Michael Colligan and Mark Baker.
They're not fans of that word.
They use the term darkness restoration or darkness pollution because the darkness is what's being polluted by light.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a similar definition to the way air pollution or water pollution are defined.
Yeah. When he came on, he tried to sell me on that. And I was like, well, I mean, look at the name, man. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I think it's all about explaining what the term means in different contexts and how it can be a pollutant, whether it be polluting the night sky or human health or wildlife and such.
Yeah. I guess I think it's easy to get hung up on the terminology, but I think light pollution serves a lot of purpose in the sense that people don't think of light as pollution. And so to put those two words together, it makes people think about light differently, right? So all of a sudden you're going, oh, wait, pollution's a bad thing. I always thought light was good. And so it's sort of, I think there's some value to bringing those two terms together.
What about on the safety and security side? Because this was to your point, Steve, when you hear Michael and Mark talk about it, what they'll say is that darkness pollution is the more, I guess, technically right way to say it. I don't think anyone can extrapolate any more from darkness pollution than light pollution, personally. But if I'm talking to someone whose main concerns are, hey, you know what? Like, I just want to know when I leave the house, everything's good. Like, I don't want to think about it. That's all I care about. How do I connect? What do I use to connect with them? Light pollution probably isn't going to connect with them.
I usually focus on the glare aspect. If their number one concern is safety, and of course the evidence is mixed in terms of like what it does light provide more safety from, I guess, crime. Like obviously for wayfinding, having some light available will make you less likely to trip over a curb or something. But yeah, when I have these discussions, I usually just focus on the fact that glaring floodlights are not going to improve your safety. If anything, the light shining directly in your eyes is just going to limit your visibility around anything but the light itself in your eyes.
Is there like a phrase that you would use though?
Crazy. Like I said, I just say glare, and I use those.
Because glare is very descriptive, right? Like, I think we've all experienced glare. It's something that everyone kind of knows. When you say glare, people just wince, right?
Yeah, and I bring up the blinding headlights, and every talk I've ever done, everyone's like, "Oh man, those are horrible." So, and just taking that concept and applying it to just general floodlights in a parking lot, it's the same. And when you show those pictures of, like, say, when someone blocks the glare, and all of a sudden now you can see the perpetrator hiding in the shadows, like, there is that connection that people have to. Oh, we can actually do lighting better.
Yep.
I feel like it's easy to get wrapped around the axle with what we call this. And I think no matter what we call it, it's going to take some explanation, right? And I think that's the important point.
Well said. Well, thank you guys. You guys really kind of went all around that topic, so it was good. This one from Arvix is nothing new to most of us, I presume. Daytime light levels can be every bit as impactful on toddlers' ability to lock in a healthy sleep schedule as nighttime ones. The study used a homeostatic circadian light model fit to a real-world data set on sleep behavior of children aged 2 and 3 and found that dimmer daytime lighting created more nighttime disruptions, and exposure to bright lights before bed led to a similar increase in nighttime disruptions. It's probably nothing crazy new in there. From clinical epigenetics, a study suggested that there may be a relationship between outdoor light levels at night and poor LDL-C control in folks who have plaque buildup condition known as intracranial atherosclerotic stenosis, which is a common cause of strokes. LDL is also known as the bad cholesterol, if you're keeping score at home. The study itself was a two-pronged project. First, it attempted to assess any association between health data and the generalized satellite capture of artificial light levels between the years of 2018 and 2022. Then it assessed how male mice genes reacted to light and dark environments, and then one group of mice received some melatonin to help it along the way. Researchers found that higher external nighttime lighting environments had a higher odds ratio of poor LDL-C control, even when accounting for lifestyle habits like smoking. As for the mice, the ones who took melatonin were able to partially counteract the effects of persistent dim lighting at night. Now, obviously, I want to caveat this study didn't take into consideration many of the things that I would have wanted to see, like lifestyle, family history, eating habits. But the overall takeaway still appears to be that artificially lit environments is having some effect on the body's metabolism. And Steve, we mentioned this in the first show this month. You had mentioned that it seems to be a circadian metabolic type connection. And this keeps coming up. We keep seeing this, there's something there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because evolutionarily, we didn't really eat at night that much. Yeah, but most of our circadian rhythm adapted to that. We ate during the day when we had ample lighting to secure food, right? As hunter-gatherers and such. Yeah, that introduction of artificial light at night basically extends our daytime, right? Of course, it suppresses melatonin in addition to having immune system associations. It also has stuff to do with metabolism. There's evidence that eating food at midnight, you're not going to metabolize that as well as you would if you ate at noon, right? Yeah, I'm not surprised about the results of this study.
Well, finishing out health news, we have one last article, a review from Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews, which found that both artificial light at night and air pollution, per the article, disrupt circadian rhythms and provoke neuronal damage, leading to compromised brain health. The study goes on to suggest that these two sets of pollutants are linked to neurodegeneration and cognitive decline. We're going to close up probably a little early today, and I got this one here. And Frank, I know, thank you for being able to find this article. I had Nancy Gollin on a while back, and she's such a fascinating mind in this. Learned a new term, lichnology, which now, we had a show name, lichnology. But I want to end today with a bit of archaeology. I had an article come through that looked at how the ancients used lighting for sea navigation. So on board vessels, torches helped light the way, but any good listener knows that there's an inherent problem with using torches, and that is a loss of dark adaptation, which could be fatal for nighttime seafarers. So a solution was created, and ships adhered vases to the bow or stern with slits or holes in them to angle the light directly outward. This article from the International Journal of Nautical Archaeology posits that the first evidence for such a solution date back to nearly 14th century BC with an illuminated reach of about 50 meters, 160 feet. Conversely, what about the shore side? How did folks ever know where the hell to land their ship? Well, on the shore, you obviously have more real estate to work with, so the harbors constructed fires atop hills, on top religious buildings, and even creating a fire tower, which is kind of an early conceptual lighthouse idea. I thought that was pretty neat. Frank, I know you found this one pretty interesting too.
For me, the cultural implications and the cultural uses of light and what light means to people and was always is a very interesting topic. And I liked sort of how you can tie our issue we're dealing with light pollution now to how people used light in the past. And yeah, if you were on a ship, that those torches could be considered light pollution because it destroyed your night vision and put you in more danger. Very similar to some of the issues we talk about today. The other thing that brought this that came to mind is I'm not sure where I've seen images of the bridges on like Navy ships, and all the lighting in the bridge on these Navy ships is designed to maintain your night vision. So everything is there's no white lights. It's all like ambers and reds and things that will help the sailors and the officers maintain their night vision, so that when they're scanning the horizon, that their night vision isn't affected. And so again, those parallels between what was going on in the 14th century and sort of what we're dealing with today I just think it is really interesting.
And not 14th century. We're talking about 14th century BC. This is way back.
14th century BC,
way
exactly.
Back. And I think this is the Egyptians that kind of had this solution to create these vases in a primitive attempt to kind of angle the light, to direct the light where it needs to go.
It's shielding the light, right? It's one of our 5 concepts of sustainable lighting. Shield your light, and that's what those guys are doing that many centuries ago. Yep. So I think it's kind of fascinating.
Definitely is. Well, I want to thank you guys for staying with me today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming by, Mr. Frank Turina, Steve Mariconda. Steve, where would people be able to learn more about anything you're doing, anything that you want to plug?
Check out the Dark Sky New Jersey website and Dark Sky New Jersey Facebook page. Trying to post on there more frequently. Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, well, wouldn't it be neat if Jersey actually became a leader in this stuff? It'll be kind of I know, okay, that's a little far crazy talk, I know right now. But I mean,
you never know.
It's
catching on. It's catching on, especially in the environmental community.
Yeah, and especially if you're talking about areas, because which county are you in?
I'm in Bergen County.
And Bergen County's...
We're right next to New York City.
Next to...
Well, the Hudson is like closer. But
yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty bright county.
It is pretty bright. I mean, Sussex, I think our darkest counties are probably Sussex, the ones that are more towards Delaware, Water Gap area.
Yeah.
And some of the ocean county, like where LBI is in Cape May County.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, good luck to you and hope to see, by God, New Jersey be able to figure itself out. That'll be neat. Frank, where can people learn more about Night Sky Resource Center or really anything you're doing right now? Because I know you got a new lesson plan you're building and everything, new course, doing a lot of stuff, man.
Yeah, I'm so busy, staying busy. But so nightskyresourcecenter.org is where you can find my kind of writing about the topic. There's also a link to my astrophotography on that site. So I have a separate site for that, but the nightskyresourcecenter.org will get you there as well.
Excellent. Did you find that people are kind of like, that's nice. That's nice astrophotography, but now that I can do it, I don't care what you do.
No, I think it's still kind of a niche hobby, right? So there's not a ton of people doing it. There's more than there was 10 years ago when I started, but I think it's still kind of a niche thing. And people are like, you took that from your deck in Denver? And they're like, there's no way, because they are very professional looking. In the 1980s, the images that I can create and any astrophotographer could create rivals what the best telescopes could do 30 years ago. So yeah, I still think it's kind of a niche thing. People were really into it. I still get a lot of comments about my astrophotography, and it's sort of it leads people into the issue of light pollution.
Yeah. And you're right. It does. People still are really intrigued by it. It's just nice to be able to put those on your wall, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think once I can get somebody interested in that, which is, again, it's very cool to see, then it's an easy step to go, oh, and this is being threatened by all this light pollution. And then it opens the conversation to that arena, and people kind of go, oh, I didn't realize that. And so you kind of get a new convert maybe.
Yeah, and I want to close out today's show with just this one thought. Steve, you mentioned in our first show when you were gazing through the Catskills night sky, how small we are, and that all that stuff, the relativity really comes to point when you're doing some of this stuff. So I want to thank you at home for joining us today. As a reminder, the show is listener supported. Thank you for any support that you've given us in the past. We rely on the support of you, listener. If you like what you hear, you can always support the show. The show is recorded on August 24th. You can learn more about today's show by visiting our website, lightpollutionnews.com. Keep an eye out for us on whatever social channels you use. Thanks once again, and remember to only shine the light where it's needed.